introduce this talks speaker, Danny Chen. Danny Chen is from Taiwan, and he is medical Fab Lab NDMC founder and also open source medical supplies Taiwan organizer. Um, he is also a National Defense Medical Center Department of Biomedical Engineer Assistants. And Danny built the first 3D printers of his in his room with his roommates at medical school 3D printing. Open source medical supplies are grassroots volunteers organizations that has more than 62,000 people globally and has produced 280,000 medical supply items all over the world, help organize 62,000 people all over the world in its Facebook page, supply plans that volunteers turning to 2,800,000 medical supply items all over the world, from face shield glass to protect medical cares of faces, and also the ventilators and also the mask. So topic is OSMS Taiwan meeting and 3D printer for COVID-19 medical supplies. Without further ado, let's welcome Danny.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can everyone see my screen share? Is okay?
Yeah, it works. Thank you.
Okay. So I just share our experience that from Taiwan about the open source medical supply, and thanks for the home keys invites. And I'm very happy to be here to share the experience that in past half year, like what we do and what we don't. So at the beginning, I just very fast to introduce myself. Hello everyone, I'm Danny Chen. I'm come from a National Defense Medical Center, Tri-Server General Hospital Medical 3D Printer Center. And I also graduate from the automation control from the National Taiwan University of Science and Technology for my master degree. And I'm in the past, I have the opportunity to the Harvard Medical School, Boston Children's Hospital to be the international observer. So today I'm very happy to be here to share the experience about how to make the PPE or some medical supplies for the COVID-19. As everyone knows that a coronavirus is a very serious pandemic in the past half year. And this is a timeline that everyone is very familiar with. It's just it outbreak last year, December. And now there's thousands of people that included and suffering from this pandemic. And during this pandemic, that around the world, a lot of maker is going to thinking about how to use a 3D printer to solve and to react to this crisis. So Taiwan also included in this maker movement. So today I'm going to share the experience that Taiwan 3D printer metal supply. So at the beginning of our plan is just started 4 months ago, and at the beginning of this plan is an idea from the nurse in our hospital, in a Tri-Server General Hospital. At that time, there's a competition of the nurse invention competition. And when I get involved in this activity, there's a nurse has an idea about use the transparent film to make the facial. So that we are including in this project. So thinking about how to use a 3D printer to make the facial to provide the clinical person. Because at that time, Taiwan is very nervous about the COVID-19. So the facial is not enough. So a lot of nurse and the doctor in the hospital, they want more facial and some PPE to protect themselves. So at the beginning that we just started some version about the facial. You can see this is the first version that we use a 3D printer to print the glass version about the facial. Okay, just 1 minute. And this is another version that we are use the forehead version about the facial PPE. This is a version 1. And at the design of the facial that we are using the 3D printer. The advantage about the 3D printer is we can keep design and modify and keep printing and provide to the clinical person. So you can see this is the beginning in the first version. After our design, it's okay. We just provide to the doctor and the nurse. And at the same time, we get the feedback from our clinical person. And in this way, we can modify to the second version and third version. So the feedback about the doctor and the nurse is that they didn't want to dig hole in the transparent film. So the second version about our facial is no hole for the transparent film. It's more easily. But this version has some question. It's about they need a rope to rope it. So we changed to a next version that to combine all-in-one facial. Didn't need the rope or some to fix on the head. So this version is very good for the clinical person, and the version 4 is our final design. So this version is very good that the doctor and the nurse didn't have to dig hole in a transparent film, and it didn't have used the rope to fix on the head. And there's also some idea from the clinical. They are just thinking about how to do for the sterilization. So they use a 3D printer to print a mask placement rack. So everyone can see this is just the placement rack that can put the facial on it and go to for the sterilization and to keep reused again. And we also compare the design from the 3D printer and the traditional facial. So the feedback about the dentist, they think that a 3D printer is more light and more comfortable for clinical use because traditional part is very heavy and very big. And we also open source our design to the Taiwan maker community and the world maker community. So at that time, there's a lot of maker involved in this project, and they print a lot of facials and donate to the hospital around their makerspace. And we also receive several facials, and you can see there a lot of kind of color that is from the love of the Taiwan makers. And the nurse is very happy to wear the colorful facial because our lab is only print the white version. And there's also a teacher that he teach in a school, and he think that using the laser cutter is also the good way to make the facial because 3D printers still take a lot of time. So this is a version like from the teacher of Fuhe Guozhong. The designer is Yong Yuhe, and he just gathered together the students and the teacher of the school and to make the laser cut facial and then donate to the hospital. So you can see this is the picture about the clinical person that wearing the laser cut facial mask. So we have two versions. The first one is the 3D printer version, and another is the laser cut version. And we all open source this design to the world. And this is just some calculates about what we do for the facial fabrication. So at the beginning of our idea, we just print three facial and go give to the nurse and the doctor. And after get the feedback, we just keep modify the design and keep printing and modify the design and keep printing. But the biggest about the fabrication about the 3D facial is 50. So we are thinking about how to make it more. So we open source to the community of the Taiwan maker. So a lot of maker donate back to the hospital. You can see this is several facial lab from the love of Taiwan. So we get over thousands of face shield around Taiwan. And then we separate this face shield to all the hospitals that who need it. So you can see not only our hospital have the face shield, we also separate and share the face shield to those hospitals they need it. So from Taoyuan and Hualien and also Kaohsiung and Beitou, Keelung, Dinzhou, Neihu, and our school. We also give them the face shield. So after the hospital get a face shield, they're very thankful. So they post the thankful article on the Facebook group. So you can see this is each Facebook about the hospital. They are very thankful for the love of the maker. So I think this is a very nice and very good experience about how let the maker and to cooperate with the doctor and the nurse and to involve this new maker movement in the COVID-19. And we also give our design to the Japan. So this is the Take space. They make the Taiwan design face shield and donate to the nearby hospital. And even there are the news report and a lot of TV and go there to report this news. And they say this is from Taiwan's medical university. Taiwan is our medical school, and Taiwan is from Taiwan. And I think that is a very good opportunity to let Taiwan design to share the world. So they also have a plan to sell the face shield in Japan and then get the money to donate to the hospital or some institute that are doing for the COVID-19. And after that, not only face shield, we also make some other project. This one is about the ear saver, and this ear saver is just a strap for the decompression, because if we wear the mask for a long time, our ear will be compressed a lot, so it's very uncomfortable. So we are going to use this 3D printer ear saver to do it. And we also have a team that do for the ventilator. Is from the OSMS Taiwan community. And this open source ventilator, that there's a lot of doctor and the engineer, maker, or the researcher in the hospital, and also some faculty of the hospital and nurse team involved. So you can see we discuss a lot how to use the 3D printer or open source file to make the ventilator. And we hope that we can do this ventilator for the research and give our experience to the world. So that if some country need to do for this kind of ventilator, they can get from the design version and experience from Taiwan. So you can see this is the structure about the ventilator. And this needs a lot of team that include in this project. And there's also another project is called a 3D printer support mask. So you can see this is the support that for the mask, because if we spend a lot of time wear the mask to speak or to discussion, the mask will be wet or it's not comfortable to wear this. So there's using the 3D printer to print support for this kind of mask. So we also joined the international community called Open Source COVID-19 Medical Supply. This is just beginning from the Facebook page. And we also go to the international community to learn a lot and get the first information. For example, this is a snorkeling mask that it can, before it's just a snorkeling mask, but it can modify to become a PPE. And also there a lot of design that for this kind of a snorkeling mask. So this can provide the doctor in the hospital to wear it in some very COVID patients bed. And another is this snorkeling mask can also modify for the patient. So this version is to provide to the patient that didn't let them for the coronavirus virus to spread off. And this is just the design of the snorkeling mask for the patient use. And so at the first time we get this information, we're very fast to use a 3D printer in our lab and to print it and do the research about how this function works and if it's possible to use in the clinical. And another one is about this respiratory valve. And this project is beginning. We see news from the BBC in the March. It says coronavirus 3D printer save hospital with valve. So there's a company in Italy that use a 3D printer to print this respiratory valve and to provide for the clinical person because there's not enough of this valve. So at that time, we also get the design and a lot of kind of versions. So we join this kind of design about the valve. So in Taiwan, that we use the 3D printer to fast rapid prototyping this kind of valve and give it to the clinical person and get a feedback. So you can see this is the RT in Tainan that they are doing some research and give the clinical experience and feedback to the design. And then we also pass this experience back to the world design community. So this case is very interesting because this designer is first from the Poland and he shared his design to the world community. So a lot of clinical person and the maker community involved this project and get a feedback to the designer, and he also modified a lot of version. So you can see this is the several version that we designed about the valve. And so this is the open design activity. And there's another project is about the 3D printer detection swap. So as we know that US have a lot of patients get the coronavirus. So we have to have a lot of swab for the detection. But in the US, there's not enough detection swab. So a lot of 3D printer company like they use the 3D printer technology to print this kind of swab. Just like a Foam Lab or Carbon or Stratasy, a lot of big company to print this swab. In Taiwan, we also have to get this file. So in our lab, we also print the same protocol of the swab. And this swab is proof that from the US FDA Class 1 medical device. And the next step, we want to combine this 3D printer swab and the quick dissection together to make it to very fast to detect the swab, detection swab to very fast to detect the coronavirus is positive or negative. And the last is about the coronavirus microfluidic detection. So we also want to do some PCR detection on the small chip that made from the 3D printer. So you can see this is the chip that we use a 3D printer to make it. And we hope to do the PCR reaction on this chip so that we can very fast to realize it's positive or negative of the patient. Didn't have to bring the sample back to the lab. And in the future, we can combine this quick service from Taiwan lab. So you can see this is another quick detection method that uses the two line. So how to detect the coronavirus, there's two ways. The first way is the PCR. So we want to use the PCR 3D printer chip that to do for the PCR reaction on this 3D printer chip and combine with the quick detection system. So this is another quick detection so that we can double check and to make confirm about the COVID-19 is negative or positive. So all the community that we set up is OSMS Taiwan. That OSMS is the short for Open Source Medical Supply, and Taiwan is one of important member of the international community. At first, we just set up a Facebook group. So our name is Open Source Medical Supply, Open Source COVID-19 Medical Supply, and there are 1,000 people in the community. And at the first time, we have a very discussion and conference about how to solve this problem. And now that we changed the name of the Facebook group from the open source mail supply, we take off the COVID-19. That because international community also think that after the COVID-19, we want this community to continue, not just the short time. So open source metal supply Taiwan is one of the important member about the international community. And now OSMS is one of the international NGO that to help a lot of countries making their medical supply and PPE. So this is a structure about the international community. As you see, there are 70,000 of makers around the world involved in this program. And there are a lot of global volunteers and organizers involved in this program. And we also have a local response technology and communication, medical arts, and documentation department. And every week that we have to calculate the facial that produced around the world. So we have a world map about the production dashboard. So you can see this as an international dashboard. And a lot of people that make is about the facial. So you can see there are a lot of countries also involved in this project, including Spain, United States, France, and United Kingdom in Australia. And every week we have an international meeting that every country share their design and share their experience how to make the PPE and to provide the local hospital. And so there's a lot of sharing also included in the virtual maker fair or the FabLab International Symposium. So this is a routine, the daily life about our meeting. That, for example, this is a meeting that the Boston they share how to making the protection clothes in their makerspace. And I also attend for the virtual maker fair. So this virtual maker fair that Fed Foundation include this virtual maker fair and to organize the 7 regions around the world to share the experience. And I also enjoy this international conference, and I'm presenting the Asia experience. So, who can help? I think that Taiwan can help in this pandemic crisis. So, I think that we can use the OSMS in the future that to provide some help to the world because even Taiwan is not included in the WHO, but I think that Taiwan can also influence the world because we do a lot of experience in this pandemic. So who can help? Taiwan can help. Thank you. This is today my sharing.
嘉恩，谢谢嘉恩。然后没有，我英文太烂了，所以我还是用中文回答。如果看大家有什么问题，如果可以丢出来问嘉恩的话，请说。嘉恩这样听得到吗？喂 ，Hello， 哇，他就离线了吗？噔噔，那怎么会这样子嘞？对，好奇妙。不好意思，我不太会用这个系统，因为今年。为什么会固定在这边啊？好奇怪哦。哦，没有，他离线了。哇，好吧，噔噔，不好意思，好奇妙哦。 所以你要问问题吗？可以，他要在这，对对对，哎，我问一下，怎么那么好笑啊？怎么会出现这种 bug？哎，hello， 家人 ，hello， 刚好有人要问问题，有人要问你问题。
OK， 请问。
Hello, I'm just curious about the things you have made in 3D printing includes like masks, valves, and ventilators. Are they currently being used in Taiwan's clinical environment, or they need to be proved by medical regulations? Because anything which is related to medical, Taiwan's government is very strict about this one. Yeah, and this is my first question. The another one will be, what is the relative condition in the US now about the 3D printing things? Thank you.
Okay. So, and the first question is about the regulation. So we realize the regulation about the 3D printer is very important. So in our community, like we include a lot of medical regulation, just specialists in our community. So there's a lot of researcher that do for the 3D printer medical regulation that they give our some advice. So as our project, the face shield is not a medical device, so it's very easy and it's okay for all the maker to make for the face shield because it's not a medical device and it can to donate to a lot of hospital. But when the ventilator or the valve and the swap is the medical device, so when we are going to deal with now, we are use the open design idea to discussion and do the research about the design part. So when the fabrication, that we have to find a GMP factory to make the supply. So I think that is a very interesting idea in this process, because before that we use the design and the fabrication in all one company, but now the design can open source. So all the community, all the maker can involve in this research and build for the right design about the medical device. And then they can produce in the local GMP factory. So when get a GMP, then they get the regulation about this medical device. So when doing the swab or the ventilator or the valve, that I think the regulation is also important, but that is more easy for some GMP factory because it's just class 1. So it needs some process. If this process and document is okay, they can produce. For example, the nasal swab is already past the United FDA proof. So in some United 3D printer lab, they set up very fast set up the GMP factory and SOP, and they can print the swab and to separate or sell to a hospital they can use. And the second is about the US situation. I think the USA situation is still not good. And for example, in the last week, there's a Fab symposium, the Fab Lab Network Symposium, that all the symposium is discussion about how to use the 3D printer or some open source design to make the PPE or anything that to face the pandemic and COVID crisis. Because in Taiwan, I think the COVID is not very bad, just like US. But in the US and around the world, it's not. The situation is still not good. So I think it's a time that Taiwan can help the world, not only to send our device to the world, but to send our knowledge. And I think the most important is we have to change from the made in Taiwan into the design in Taiwan. So design in Taiwan and produce locally. I think that is the future, the medical supplies direction. It's okay for the question and answer?
Yeah. We have one last question. Is that okay? Because we're gonna wrap it up really quick. Anybody have any further questions? All right. I think this is it. Thank you so much for Danny for your speech, and all the slides is gonna be up on COSCUP website, and we're gonna post it when we have everything ready online on Facebook page. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you so much for what you do for Taiwan. We're proud of
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Taiwan can help.
Yes, Taiwan can help.